New York City, it's a jungle out there, especially for a guy named Meatball. Yeah, you heard that right. Meatball. He wasn't exactly winning any most likely to succeed awards unless the category was most likely to trip over air. Meatball's days were a glorious mix of misadventures and naps. Picture this: wake up, stumble over his bong again, fire up their PlayStation. Fallout 76 was his jam. Why? Who knows? The dude just loved nuking virtual wastelands and eating, lots of eating. Between mutant hunts and building elaborate digital shacks, Meatball would pass out. Drool on the controller kind of naps. He blamed the naps on the game or the bong. Mostly it was the meat sweats. But hey, nobody's perfect except maybe that hot vegan chick at the bodega. More on her later. Let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the meatball in the essay. Why Meatball? Simple. The dude lived on a diet of pure protein and saturated fat. We're talking bacon for breakfast, burgers for lunch, steak for dinner, and pepperoni pizza as a late-night snack. Vegetables? Never heard of them. His cholesterol was higher than his kill-death ratio in Fallout 76. His doctor begged him to eat a salad. Think of the fiber man, he'd plead. Meatball just grunted and ordered another pizza. What can you say? The guy liked what he liked. This carnivorous lifestyle had its consequences, namely a constant state of meat-induced lethargy. Hence, Meatball. He was round, he was sluggish, and he was about to have a life-changing encounter in the most unlikely of places. The produce aisle. The meat drawer was looking emptier than Meatball's dating life, which is saying something, considering he hadn't been on a date since dial-up was a thing. It was time for a meat run. Dragging himself off the couch, Meatball threw on his greasiest sweatpants, you know the ones, and headed to the local supermarket. The fluorescent lights hummed, the shopping cart squeaked, and Meatball beelined it straight for the meat section. His sanctuary, his happy place. He was humming the theme song from Rocky, mentally preparing for the glorious feast to come, when he bumped into her. She was like a vision. A vegan, gluten-free, kale smoothie, drinking vision. And she was blocking the bacon. Section 4. Green eyes and kale smoothies. "Oh, excuse me," she said, her voice as smooth as a strawberry spinach smoothie. Her tone was so inviting, it felt like a warm summer breeze had just swept through the bustling city. She had an aura that made the noisy streets of New York seem like a serene garden. Meatball assumed he'd never actually tried one. He was more of a bacon and eggs kind of guy, the kind who found comfort in the sizzle of a frying pan rather than the hum of a blender. But there was something about her that made him curious, almost adventurous. She had eyes the color of kale, again he assumed, and a smile that could make a carnivore consider tofu. Her eyes were mesmerizing, like two emeralds glistening in the sunlight. They seemed to hold secrets of a world where health and happiness were intertwined. Meatball, being a simple man of simple pleasures, mumbled something about bacon and tried not to drool. He felt a bit out of place, like a fish out of water, but he couldn't help but be drawn to her. There was a magnetic pull that made him want to impress her, even if it meant stepping out of his comfort zone. "You like bacon?" she asked, her nose wrinkling slightly. Her expression was a mix of curiosity and mild disapproval, as if she couldn't quite understand how anyone could enjoy something so unhealthy. "I could never. All that fat and cholesterol." She shook her head, her disapproval evident. It was clear she was passionate about her healthy lifestyle, and Meatball felt a pang of guilt for his own dietary choices. Meatball, captivated by her beauty and slightly terrified by her knowledge of nutritional facts, blurted out, "I can change." He wasn't sure where the words came from, but he meant them. He wanted to be someone she could admire, someone who shared her values. "I mean, I like vegetables. Sometimes," he added, trying to sound convincing. His mind raced as he tried to think of the last time he had willingly eaten a vegetable. It had been a while, but he was determined to make a good impression. She raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. Her skepticism was palpable, and Meatball felt a surge of determination. He needed to prove to her that he was serious, that he could embrace a healthier lifestyle. Meatball, desperate to impress her, grabbed the nearest vegetable he could find, a head of broccoli. It was an impulsive move, but he hoped it would show her that he was willing to change, to try new things. "See? I love broccoli. It's my favorite," he declared, holding it up like a trophy. His voice wavered slightly, but he stood tall, hoping his enthusiasm would win her over. He knew it was a small step, but it was a start, and sometimes that's all you need. Section 5, Heartbreak in Aisle 5. The vegan goddess giggled, a sound like wind chimes made of organic bamboo. Her laughter echoed through the aisles, a melody that seemed to make the fluorescent lights above shine a little brighter. She was the epitome of health and vitality, her skin glowing with the radiance of someone who had never touched a processed snack in her life. Her cart was filled with kale, quinoa, and an assortment of colorful vegetables that looked like they had been plucked straight from a Garden of Eden. Meatball's heart, usually clogged with cholesterol, skipped a beat. He was in. He could feel it. His eyes followed her every move, mesmerized by the way she effortlessly navigated the aisles. He imagined himself by her side, sharing a life of green smoothies and yoga classes. He could almost taste the kale chips they would make together, the avocado toast they would share on lazy Sunday mornings. Maybe he could ditch the meat sweats and become a green smoothie kind of guy. He pictured himself trading in his greasy burgers for veggie wraps, his beer for kombucha. He could see it all so clearly. The new improved Meatball, leaner and healthier, with a fridge full of organic produce and a heart full of love. Just then, a tall, muscular dude with a man bun and a shirt that said, "I love tofu," strolled up to them. He had the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you can bench press your own body weight and then some. His presence was like a gust of wind, blowing away Meatball's daydreams in an instant. "Hey, babe," he said, wrapping his arm around the vegan goddess. "Ready to go?" His voice was smooth, like a perfectly blended smoothie, and it made Meatball's heart sink. The way she leaned into him, so comfortable and familiar, told Meatball everything he needed to know. They're having a sale on nutritional yeast. The words hung in the air, a cruel reminder of the world Meatball was not a part of. Nutritional yeast, a staple in the vegan diet, was as foreign to him as the idea of a meatless Monday. Meatball watched in stunned silence as his dreams of a green, smoothie-filled future evaporated faster than a drop of water on a hot skillet. He felt a pang of loss, as if he had been so close to something wonderful, only to have it snatched away at the last moment. His mind raced, trying to process the sudden turn of events. He was left standing there, holding a head of broccoli like a wilted bouquet of rejection. The vibrant green florets seemed to mock him, a symbol of the life he would never have. He could almost hear the broccoli laughing at him, its tiny buds shaking with mirth. The tofu-loving duo disappeared down the organic aisle, leaving Meatball to contemplate the cruel irony of the universe. He stood there feeling the weight of his own inadequacies, the gap between his reality and the dream he had so briefly entertained. As they vanished from sight, he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever find his place in a world of kale and quinoa, or if he was destined to remain an outsider, forever longing for a taste of the life he could never have. Section 6. Veggies meet their maker. Back in his apartment, the broccoli seemed to mock Meatball with its green, leafy judgment. It was as if the vegetables were silently accusing him of his carnivorous ways, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the usual browns and reds of his meat-centric meals. He stared at the vegetables he'd impulsively bought to impress the vegan goddess. The kale, the bell peppers, the zucchini, they all seemed to taunt him with their unfamiliarity. He had no idea how to prepare them, let alone make them taste good. Carrots, celery, spinach, they were all a painful reminder of his single, meat-loving existence. Each vegetable represented a failed attempt to bridge the gap between his world and hers. He felt a pang of regret for ever thinking he could change his ways so easily. "Well, you know what they say," Meatball muttered to himself, grabbing the head of broccoli. He tried to muster some enthusiasm, but it was hard to ignore the sinking feeling in his stomach. He was out of his depth, and he knew it. If life gives you lemons... He trailed off, realizing he had no idea what to do with lemons, let alone vegetables. Frustration bubbled over. He had hoped for a moment of inspiration, but instead he was left with a sense of impending doom. He trailed off, realizing he had no idea what to do with lemons, let alone vegetables. Frustration bubbled over. The kitchen, once a place of comfort and familiarity, now felt like a battleground. He was losing the war against the vegetables, and it was only a matter of time before they claimed victory. Meatball, in a fit of rage and despair, chucked the broccoli against the wall. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated frustration. He had tried to be someone he wasn't, and now he was paying the price. The broccoli exploded in a shower of green florets, a fitting end to his ill-fated attempt at veganism. It exploded in a shower of green florets. The sight was almost cathartic, a release of all the pent-up frustration and self-doubt. But it was also a stark reminder of his failure. He had let his emotions get the better of him, and now his kitchen was a mess. He then proceeded to unleash his fury on the rest of the vegetables, transforming his kitchen into a salad bar massacre. Carrots flew through the air, celery sticks snapped in half, and spinach leaves fluttered to the ground like confetti. It was a scene of utter chaos, but in that moment, Meatball didn't care. Exhausted and covered in vegetable shrapnel, Meatball collapsed onto the couch and fell into a deep, meat-sweaty sleep. His dreams were filled with visions of steaks and burgers, a comforting reminder of the life he knew and loved. But even in his sleep, the vegetables haunted him, a nagging reminder of his failed attempt to change. Little did he know his life was about to get a whole lot weirder. The events of that day were just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself and the world around him. The vegetables had won this battle, but the war was far from over.